Die Deutsche Forschungsanstalt für Segelflug, or the German Institute for Glider Research, was formed in 1933 to centralize all gliding activity in Germany. The DFS was involved in producing gliders for the Luftwaffe, as well as conducting research into advanced technologies such as the flying wing. In 1940, the DFS started a secret program to achieve supersonic flight. Since the only engines powerful enough and available at the time were rocket engines, it was realized that the solution was to have the assault on the sound barrier take place at a high altitude. It was decided to divide the research program into 3 sections. The first part was concerned with developing and testing of the pressurized cockpit section. The second part was to discover the performance of various swept-back wing configurations, and the third and last part was to actually build a supersonic aircraft. The DFS decided to design a new aircraft to investigate the first part of their 3-step research program. But in 1941, the German Air Force assigned the number 228 to the aircraft and requested that the DFS 228 also be designed for high-altitude reconnaissance duties. The first prototype of the DFS 228 V1 was completed in 1943. The fuselage consisted of 3 circular sections: the nose section containing the cockpit, the center section which contained the landing skid, fuel tanks, and an infrared camera, and the tail section with the Walter rocket engine. The wing was attached at the mid-fuselage point and featured 4.5 degrees of dihedral. Landing was done on a retractable skid. Since the DFS-28 was to operate in extremely high altitudes, a completely pressurized cockpit was designed. Although it was thought at first that the pressure cabin could be of wooden construction, a metal compartment was built after the wooden one failed to hold sufficient pressure. The V1 prototype had a conventional seated pilot's position, but the second one, the V2, and later aircraft were to have a prone pilot position due to the difficulty of sealing such a large compartment with the pilot seated upright. All glazed areas were made of double-layered plexiglass and were provided with warm air circulation between layers to prevent frosting of the plexiglass. A very interesting flight plan was arranged for the operational DFS-228. It was to be mounted above a carrier aircraft, usually a Dornier DO-217K, where it was then carried to approximately 10,000 meters. Upon release, the DFS-228 would then ignite its rocket engine until an altitude of about 25,000 meters were reached. By this time, the aircraft would be over its photographic target area, and after its reconnaissance mission was fulfilled, the aircraft would then make a long glide back to its base. In the case of an emergency at high altitudes, the complete pressurized nose section with all life support equipment attached could be jettisoned. An automatic parachute would then deploy to stabilize and slow the descent. When a safe altitude was reached, the pilot was ejected by compressed air, who would then descend to the ground using his own personal parachute. It is interesting to note that this very extreme escape procedure was successfully tested by the Soviet Air Force after the war. Flight trials were made from October of 1944. Over 40 test flights were made, and although powered flight was to take place in February of 1945, none were actually made using rocket power. The DFS-228V2 was destroyed in May of 1945, but the DFS-228V1 survived the war and was surrendered in the US zone of occupation. In June of 1945, it was taken by road to the US Air Technical Intelligence Unit at Stuttgart. It was later sent to Farnborough in June of 1946 and was sent to scrap pile in 1947.